Magic in the Kingkiller Chronicle is an intriguing subject, particularly as there are quite a few types that exist in this world. What I find enjoyable is that the magic works by concrete rules, and is explained in such a way so as not to break the willing suspension of disbelief. When you pick up any book from your local library or bookstore, an unspoken contract is made between you and the author. The idea is that the writer provides the reader with an entertaining story, in exchange for the reader accepting the reality of the story as is presented in whatever fictional universe the characters inhabit. This is especially vital in a fantasy setting, where magic plays a pivotal role. An author is under no obligation to be realistic, but the world building and magic should at least be believable. When an author tries to push an idea onto their audience beyond what they are willing to accept, then the work comes off as being contrived, and ends up failing. This is why internal consistency and adherence to one's own rules are so important. Or, to put it another way, you can ask an audience to believe the impossible, but not the improbable. Thankfully, Rothfuss's magic systems don't fall victim to this issue, and a big reason for this is that they are grounded in reality. Sympathy, and in turn Sygaldry, are almost like science, and bear more in common with physics and calculus than how magic is traditionally conveyed in the fantasy genre. Picking up from a previous video of mine where I discussed the principles of sympathy, I now turn to one of the university's more practical fields of study, Sygaldry. Simply put, Sygaldry is a set of tools for channeling forces. It's very similar to sympathy in the way that it manipulates energy to achieve its desired effect. However, the greatest distinction between the two lies in how long the effects last. While sympathy achieves a temporary result, such as the lifting of one coin which in turn lifts the other until the first coin is put back down, the results of Sygaldry are intended to last permanently, or at least as long as possible. Sygaldry is achieved through carving of runes into materials. These runes mimic the effects of sympathy to create items with special properties. There are some 197 runes in total. Kvothe is said to have learned all of the runes in approximately 7 days, an undertaking that usually takes most students a month or more. Kvothe learns Sygaldry in a week by setting the runes to the lyrics of a song he made. These runes can be used in a range of combinations to perform a wide variety of effects on materials. Kvothe explains it best when describing how two bricks can be stuck together. For example, you can engrave one brick with the rune Ul and another with the rune Dok, following which the two runes would cause the bricks to cling to each other as if cemented in place. But it's not as simple as that. What really happens is that the two bricks rip each other apart due to the sheer strength of attraction between those two runes. A workaround to this is to add a third rune, Aru, to each of the bricks. Aru is the rune for clay, and it makes the two pieces cling together, solving your problem. Except that Aru and Dok don't fit, they're the wrong shape. To get them to fit, you have to add a few linking runes, Gia and Te. Then for balance, you have to add Gia and Te to the other brick too. Then the bricks cling to each other without breaking, but that's only if the bricks are made out of clay. As we well know, many are not, so it's a better idea to add some iron into the mix. Of course, that means you have to use Fer instead of Aru. Then you have to switch Tea and Gia so the ends come together properly. You get the idea. As you might have guessed, there are simpler and more reliable methods for holding bricks together. But this passage works well in conveying just how dynamic Sygaldry can be. Most students come to learn and practice Sygaldry at a vast workshop under the command of Master Kilvin. This place is known as the Artificery, or Fishery for short. Scores of curious oddities and wonders are produced at the workshop, including glass twice as tough that won't shatter under impact, sheets of gold so thin they tear like tissue paper, simultaneous bells that ring in time with one another, and lamps of all colours which takes ambient heat from its environment and converts it into light. By far one of the more interesting and impressive creations we've come across thus far in the books is Kvothe's arrow catch, which is later renamed Bloodless as a nod to the famous title he picks up following his public lashing. The purpose of the bloodless device is to protect travellers by sympathetically catching arrows shot on the road by bandits, making them stop. According to the books, it's supposed to resemble an 8-sided metal lantern. It works by binding any incoming piece of iron, obsidian, or thin, cylindrical piece of wood. When an arrow is within the device's range whilst flying at a sufficient velocity, a spring is triggered, deflecting or negating the momentum from the incoming projectile. Instead of hitting its intended mark, the arrow will either drop mid-flight or swerve to avoid the target completely. It is theorized that the bloodless can stop a maximum of 8 arrows before the springs need to be reset, as this is how many faces the device has. As there is only one spring on each side of the lantern, the device hangs on a pivot ring, enabling it to stop multiple projectiles shot from a single direction. The energy of an incoming arrow will swing the device around to the nearest untriggered spring. This is similar to how a weather vane moves to indicate the direction from which the wind is blowing. It is no surprise then that the bloodless becomes extremely popular and profitable in Kvothe's absence. I'm curious to see if Kvothe will make personal use of it himself in the future. Even if he doesn't, the construction of the device might well be a clue to solving one of the deepest mysteries presented in the Chronicle. I am of course talking about the Lackless Box, with no visible hinges, seams or locks, but nonetheless contains something hidden inside. The answer to the puzzle that is the Lackless Box may lie in creating a device with properties similar to the bloodless. The bloodless works by binding any incoming arrows it detects within its field of radius. So why not create a mechanism for detecting whatever's inside the box? The way to do this would be to place the box and the detecting device on 2 separate moving carts that pass each other, thereby creating sufficient velocity. Then when you bring the box into the area of effect, if the runes on the detector match whatever's inside, it will react. If not, nothing will occur. For example, if we set up a piece of iron as the target component to bond and nothing triggers, we now know that there is no iron inside the box. Each time Kvothe can record whether or not a binding is made, change the runes according to their material shape and size, and try again, narrowing down the possibilities until he gets a result. This will undoubtedly involve plenty of trial and error, especially with swapping out multiple materials, but some very valuable information could be garnered from the test, unless the thing that's inside is made of something that cannot be described or understood. It could be of the Fey realm, like Kvothe's Sheed, in which case Sygaldry won't be much help. There's also the risk of damaging the box's contents. The primary law that Sympathy and Sygaldry respect is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. The energy has to come from somewhere. Making energy move in unnatural ways could create slippage. We know energy loss when performing Sympathy can seep partially into the Arcanist. So we can presume therefore that in Sygaldry some of that lost energy from slippage goes into the objects connected via the runes. In attempting to find out the box's secret contents, Kvothe, or someone with sloppy artificing, might end up destroying the object inside. As with Sympathy, Sygaldry is a fascinating magic system, with endless practical possibilities. Rothfuss has done well in applying real-world science to his magic that I think any aspiring physicist or mathematician would appreciate. But I'd now like to know your thoughts on the subject. Comment down below, like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more. I really appreciate your support. See you next time.